I was 21 when my older sister, Rachel, asked me to watch her kids overnight while she and her husband attended a wedding out of state. I'd babysat Evan, who was 9, and Lily, who was 6, dozens of times before. This wasn't supposed to be anything different. They lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood where everyone knew each other's cars and porch lights stayed on late, the kind of place where kids ride bikes after dark and nothing ever makes the news. Before they left, Rachel walked me through the usual routine: dinner, no TV upstairs, bed by 9. As she was heading out the door, she stopped and handed me a folded piece of paper. "I forgot," she said. "Just follow these." I unfolded it and felt my stomach tighten. House rules: lock all doors by 8 p.m. Do not open the basement door. Ignore knocking after bedtime. If the phone rings after 9 p.m., do not answer. I laughed and asked if this was some kind of joke. Rachel didn't laugh back. "It's just house stuff," she said. "Don't worry about it." They left before I could ask anything else. Dinner went fine. The kids joked and argued like normal. Evan complained about homework. Lily asked if she could sleep with her door open. Nothing felt off. At 7:59, I locked every door: front, back, garage. I double-checked them, even though I felt ridiculous doing it. At 8:03, there was a knock. Soft, slow, polite, from the front door. I froze in the living room, remote still in my hand. The knocking came again, 3 gentle taps. I stood up and took a step toward the door before remembering the rules. I stopped myself, heart thudding. Then I heard a voice. "Hello?" it said, calmly. "I know you're in there." My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I didn't answer. The knocking stopped. For a few minutes, everything was quiet again. I convinced myself it had been a neighbor, maybe someone at the wrong house. I sat back down and turned the TV volume up slightly. At 8:20, the knocking started again, this time from beneath the stairs, the basement door. Lily screamed upstairs. I ran up and found her standing in the hallway, clutching her stuffed rabbit, eyes wide. "Someone's downstairs," she whispered. I told her she must have heard the TV, walked her back to her room, and checked her closet and under the bed. Nothing. When I turned to leave, she grabbed my arm. "You didn't lock the basement door." I hadn't unlocked it. I went downstairs slowly, keeping my eyes on the door. It was closed, locked. The handle wasn't moving. I checked my phone again. 9:01. The phone rang. Unknown number. I stared at it until it stopped. Then it rang again. I didn't answer. Evan came down the stairs, rubbing his eyes. "Why were you in my room?" he asked. I told him I hadn't been. He frowned. "You stood in my doorway. You didn't say anything." I felt cold all over. I made them sit on the couch with me and turned the TV off. The silence felt too heavy, like the house was listening. Then we heard footsteps, upstairs, slow, deliberate, moving from room to room. Lily started crying. Evan grabbed my arm and whispered, "That's not Dad." I told them to stay put and grabbed the heaviest thing I could find from the kitchen, a metal flashlight. My hands were shaking as I went up the stairs. The hallway light was off. I turned it on. At the far end of the hall, Lily's bedroom door was open. Something was standing inside. Tall, too tall. Its back was to me, head tilted slightly as if listening to the kids breathing downstairs. I whispered, "Hello?" without meaning to. It turned its head just enough for me to see part of its face, and then it spoke, in a voice that sounded almost amused. "They're very well behaved." I didn't run upstairs. I ran down. I grabbed the kids, yelled for them to put their shoes on, then changed my mind and dragged them outside barefoot. We ran to the neighbor's house across the street and pounded on the door until someone answered. From their porch, I watched my sister's house. A few seconds later, the front door opened. The thing stepped out calmly, adjusting its sleeves like it had nowhere to rush to. It looked back at the house once, then at us, and smiled. The police came, but they found nothing.
When Rachel came home, the paper with the rules was gone. She didn't ask me what happened. She just said, "I was hoping it wouldn't happen again."
I was 18 the first time I babysat Madeline and Harper Collins, twin sisters whose parents worked overnight shifts at a regional hospital. I'd watched them before without anything strange happening, which is why I didn't take their mom seriously when she mentioned the corners. She said it casually while grabbing her purse. Sometimes they talked to the corners of their room, she told me, like it was some harmless habit. Just ignore it. I smiled and nodded. Kids do weird things. Twins do weirder things. I didn't think about it again once their parents left. The house itself was older than most in the neighborhood. Not creepy in the obvious way, no broken stairs or flickering lights, but it had that settled feeling, like it remembered things. Sound traveled strangely upstairs, and the air always felt a few degrees colder than downstairs. Dinner was quiet. The girls sat side by side, mirroring each other's movements without noticing. When Madeline took a bite, Harper followed. When Harper wiped her mouth, Madeline did the same. They barely spoke, just shared quick looks between themselves like they were communicating without words. At 8:15, I took them upstairs for bed. Their room sat at the end of a narrow hallway, 2 small beds, identical blankets, and a single lamp on the dresser between them. No overhead fan, no toys on the floor. Everything looked almost staged. I sat on the floor while they climbed into bed. That's when Madeline lifted her arm and waved. Slowly, carefully, toward the upper corner of the room. "Good night," she whispered. Harper waved too. "Good night," she said. Same tone, same timing. I laughed awkwardly and asked who they were talking to. Neither answered. They lay down at the same time, turned onto their sides at the same time, and closed their eyes like the conversation was over. I stood there longer than I should have, then turned off the lamp and left the door slightly open. Downstairs, I had tried to shake it off. I turned on the TV and kept the volume low, but I wasn't really watching. I kept replaying the way they waved, slow, deliberate, like someone had taught them how. At 9:10, I heard giggling upstairs. It wasn't loud, it was controlled, like someone trying not to be caught. I went back up, already annoyed. When I opened their door, both girls were sitting upright, eyes fixed on the same corner. "She came back," Harper said quietly. My stomach tightened. I asked who she meant. Madeline pointed toward the ceiling corner. The light from the hallway didn't reach it properly. It wasn't darker, it was deeper, like the space didn't belong to the room. I told them to lie down and reached for the overhead light. It didn't turn on. I flipped the switch again. Nothing. The lamp on the dresser still worked, casting a soft yellow glow, but the corner stayed untouched by it. That's when I noticed movement. At first, I thought it was a shadow shifting. Then, I saw fingers, long, pale, and thin, slowly curled back into the corner, like something pulling itself out of sight. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I grabbed both girls and backed out of the room, closing the door behind us. We stayed downstairs after that. I let them sit on the couch with blankets, telling myself I'd call their parents if anything else happened. The girls were unusually quiet now, clinging to my arms, eyes flicking toward the ceiling every few seconds. At 9:45, Harper leaned in and whispered, "She doesn't like when you watch." I asked what she meant. "She stands closer when you look away," Madeline added. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no messages. At 10:05, both girls fell asleep on either side of me. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe deeply. I stayed awake, staring at the darkened hallway. At 10:30, I felt pressure behind my shoulder. Not a touch, just the awareness of someone standing too close. I didn't turn around. The shadow on the wall stretched longer than it should have. Then, I heard breathing, slow, steady, not coming from the girls. I stood up with both of them in my arms and moved toward the front door. The handle didn't turn. I hadn't locked it earlier. I tried the back door. Locked. That's when I heard footsteps upstairs. Light, unhurried,
moving from the girl's room toward the top of the stairs. I opened the door the moment the lock clicked and ran. Outside, barefoot, cold pavement under my feet. The police found nothing, no signs of forced entry, no evidence anyone else had been there. When their parents came home, their mom didn't ask me what happened. She just hugged her daughters and locked every door and window in the house. As I was leaving, she stopped me. "She's never been brave enough to come downstairs before," she said softly. I never babysat for them again.
I was 16 when I babysat the Harris baby for the first time, and I remember thinking it would be the easiest money I'd ever make. They lived in one of those newer housing developments where every house looks identical: gray siding, white trim, tiny front porch, no personality yet. The kind of place where nothing bad is supposed to happen because nothing interesting has had time to grow there. Noah was just over a year old. He couldn't talk yet, barely walked, and according to his parents, slept through almost anything. That was emphasized more than once, like they wanted to reassure themselves as much as me. Before they left, his mom showed me the baby monitor setup. One camera in the nursery, angled toward the crib. The screen sat on the kitchen counter and could be carried around the house. "There's sometimes a delay," she said casually, like she was talking about buffering on a video. "So if you hear him before you see it, don't panic." I nodded, barely listening. At 16, I thought I understood technology better than adults anyway. They left around 7. The house went quiet in that way that only happens when someone else's parents leave, and you're suddenly responsible for everything inside the walls. I checked the locks like they asked. Front door, back door, garage door. All good. Noah was already asleep, so there wasn't much to do. I sat on the couch with the monitor next to me, scrolling through my phone, glancing up every few seconds. The screen showed him lying on his back, one arm bent awkwardly above his head, chest rising and falling. At 8:12, the monitor crackled. Not loud, just a quick burst of static. I looked up automatically. The video feed didn't change. Then I heard it again. Soft sound, like fabric rubbing together. I leaned forward, volume up. The sound didn't stop. It turned rhythmic. Breathing. Slow. Measured. Too steady to be a baby. I stared at the screen. Noah hadn't moved. I told myself it was interference. Baby monitors pick up weird stuff sometimes. Radio frequencies, neighbors' devices, that's what everyone says. But then I heard something else. A whisper. Not loud enough to understand, just the shape of words being spoken close to the microphone. I felt a chill crawl up my arms. I kept my eyes on the screen, waiting for the delay his mom mentioned. 5 seconds passed. Then Noah's eyes opened. He didn't cry. He didn't stir. He just stared upward, past the camera, tracking something above him, like his eyes were following movement on the ceiling. Then he smiled. A slow, deliberate smile. I don't know why that scared me more than crying would have. Babies smile all the time, but this didn't feel random. It felt responsive. The whispering stopped. The screen stayed still. I stood up and told myself I was being dramatic, that babies smile to nothing, that the audio was delayed or picking up something harmless. I grabbed the monitor and walked upstairs, trying to make my steps sound confident. The nursery door was closed. I stopped in front of it, staring at the handle. I knew I hadn't closed it earlier. I always left it cracked. I listened. Nothing. I opened the door. The room looked normal. Too normal. The nightlight glowed softly. Noah was asleep again, face relaxed, breathing steady. But the room smelled different. Not bad, just unfamiliar, like someone else's soap. Something clean, but not from this house. I checked the obvious places. Closet, empty. Under the crib, nothing. Behind the rocking chair, clear.
I stood there longer than I needed to, feeling stupid before telling myself to get a grip. I was alone in a house with a baby. Of course, my brain was inventing things. I turned to leave. That's when I heard it, right behind me. A whisper, clear as day. He can see me. I spun around so fast my shoulder hit the doorframe. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I grabbed Noah out of the crib without even thinking about waking him. He started fussing, then crying, little fists clenching my shirt. Backed out of the room, scanning every corner as I went. Downstairs felt wrong now. Every shadow seemed deeper. I set Noah on my hip and rushed toward the back door. It was open, wide open. Cold air rushed in from outside and I felt my stomach drop. I was sure I'd locked it earlier. I knew I had. I slammed it shut, locked it, then checked the front door again. Still locked. Noah was crying harder now. I locked us in the bathroom, sat on the floor, and called 911 with shaking hands. I told the operator there was someone in the house, that I was babysitting, that I heard a voice in the baby's room. She asked if I could see anyone. I said no. She asked if there were any weapons. I said I didn't know. The police arrived quickly. Too quickly for how long the whispering had been happening. They searched the house, every room, every closet, the backyard. No signs of forced entry. No one hiding. Noah's parents came home to police lights in their driveway. While the officers talked to them, Noah's dad walked straight to the kitchen counter and picked up the monitor. He stared at it for a long time without speaking. Then, he asked me why I moved the second camera. I told him I didn't know what he was talking about. He turned the screen toward me. There were 2 video feeds, the one I recognized and another angle, a close-up of the crib, from inside the nursery, from a height that wasn't mounted anywhere. The timestamp showed it activated at 8:11, 1 minute before Noah smiled.